So last year, Family Leadership Summit 2022, our keynote speaker was Tucker Carlson. And he lit up this stage, and people just loved Tucker's speech. And he had so much fun in Iowa that when I interviewed him after the summit, I said, when you come back to Iowa in 2023 to do the leadership summit, and he visibly just laughed out loud hysterically like he would come back. That's my understanding. He's got more free time in his schedule today. So, but in all seriousness, Darla and I, we had breakfast with Tucker in Boca Grande. And this was in February, and we were casting the vision of the Leadership Summit this year and what it was going to look like. And how we were going to be interviewing national voices as we really cast a vision at a very important time in our country. And I remember him saying, I would love to do that. And I thought, wow, we really didn't even make the invitation yet, and he would love to do this. And on the way back, Darla and I were driving from Boca Grande to Marco Island. He texted me about 45 minutes later, and he said, just want you to know I'm all in if you want me. And I'm telling you what, Tucker has become a really, really good friend. Probably the highest praise that he gets is from my wife, Darla. And the reason is because Darla gets a chance to meet a lot of important people. For whatever reason, but they like her better than me, but she gets a chance to meet him. She honestly says, he's the one person that I like more every time that I meet him. Because he's just genuine, he's just authentic. He's the leading voice in American politics. His show, Tucker on Twitter, debuted by shattering records and reshaping the news media landscape. One time I looked at his Twitter video, and I think it was 75 million views. He previously hosted Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson Tonight, the highest rated program in the network's history. Give him applause for that. He's the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, and you can keep up to date on Tucker's latest at tuckercarlson.com. Without further ado, would you please welcome the one, the only, Tucker Carlson to the stage.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
God
you.
bless you, man.
Oh, God bless you. Oh, my gosh. Oh. Thank you.
Well, I kind of handed it to the audience, but thank you for making time.
Oh, I'm unemployed. No, I love Iowa, sincerely.
Well, we love having you here. And you got a big job today. You got a big role today in doing these interviews with these national voices, casting vision for the future of this country. What's your hope out of today?
To find out who they are, to understand. I mean, look, there are so many issues that any president faces over the course of 4 or 8 years. It's impossible to get, and probably not even very useful to get, a candidate's opinion. Where are you on ethanol? Kind of an interesting question, actually. but there are 1,000 questions like that.
You are in Iowa, by the way. But go ahead.
No, by the way, ethanol wrecked my chainsaw. I'm sorry, I have to say that. Every year for the past 8 years, I put a new carburetor in my chainsaw.
We need to move on.
Sorry,
we need to move on. Okay?
No, it's great. It's great. Anyway, excuse me. That's true, as you know. But anyway, you can ask questions about all the issues, and I think pressing issues in the news worth asking about. But in general, when you interview a candidate, I have found it's best to see if you can discover what the person's instincts are. What's their gut reaction to things? That's a much better guide to what sort of president that person would be. And so I hope to elicit that. What's this person like? That really matters. And it's not just about virtue. I mean, I prefer virtuous people. I try to be one, not very successfully most of the time, but that's important. But is this person pro-human? For me, that's kind of the bottom line.
Amen. When we looked at this, and I remember I talked to the candidates before the National Voice. This is a C3 event. This is not a campaign event. They shouldn't solicit. They shouldn't give out websites, all that stuff. But when I visited with them, I said a couple things. One is, when you come to Leadership Summit, it's going to be a safe space. There's going to be no gotcha questions.
Right.
But there could be gotcha answers. And we've seen that from time to time as well. And so we're really trying to determine what is a person's character, the consistency of their convictions, what's their competency. There's a lot of people you know well that they want to be president. But are you prepared to be president? And then is this your Esther moment for such a time as this? So how do you try to draw that out of these voices and get them off the stump speech?
Well, I was sitting in my hotel room in my boxers this morning thinking about that very question.
Well, there's something reassuring about this.
Yeah, not very reassuring. 2 cups of coffee. And, you know, I wrote out a bunch of questions. I can't even read my own handwriting, and I don't have my glasses, so I probably won't even be reading them. But really, you can kind of, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people. It's like the one thing I've done in life. And you just get a very strong feeling from someone, a vibe from someone when you're in the physical presence of that person. It's very different from talking on the phone or doing a Zoom or whatever the Chinese-controlled software is. And I'm sure it's totally on the level, don't worry. Just calm down, conspiracy nuts.
This is starting so well.
I'm not used to working in the morning, sorry. I'm like walking my dogs at this hour. But you really get a different feeling when you're with someone physically. I believe in that. And so I've got like an opening question or whatever for everybody, but the subsequent questions are always based on the answer. You know, I think, and worked at, believe it or not, 25 years ago I worked at CNN for years. And at the time there was this host there who really dominated cable television called Larry King. And everybody said, oh, Larry King's an idiot. He's never read a book. He's written 12 books but never read one. Everyone would make fun of Larry King. And I, of course, did too, because I was shallow and mean. But then I became his fill-in guy. And I would, when he was on vacation, I would fill in for him. And I had a long talk with him about how to do the show. And he goes, no, I just listen really carefully. Like, I don't know anything. I'm the most ignorant man in the world. I've never read a book. That's totally true. I'm basically illiterate. But I'm interested in other people. And when they answer, like, I follow carefully what they say. And that's the key. Because I like people. And I thought, Larry King's like kind of a genius, actually. There's a reason he was #1. And I've really tried to emulate that in the years since. Just listen carefully to what the person says. And of course, when you're interviewing politicians, like, they want to drown you with their words, none of which they mean. Like, I'm not pointing to anyone specifically, but like, there's just, it's a Vesuvius of words. Well, and another thing. And, so your job is to try to kind of keep it to the relevant stuff without being impolite. I try not to be impolite ever. I really try to be polite. But to try to, like, keep the person to stuff that will inform the audience in a meaningful way about who the person is. So that's kind of my strategy for all interviews.
Well, I think you're going to do great. I want to go back to when Darla and I had breakfast with you at Boca Grande. And it was a beautiful dining room. And it was quite large, and there's only a few others in there, and we thought we were going to talk to you about some kind of sensitive matters, and it's like everybody can hear what we're talking.
And I was yelling as you.
Oh, no. Before you showed up, I said to Darla, I wonder if Tucker has an inside voice.
No. Talk to my many daughters about that. Lower your voice.
But we got kind of in a deep conversation about, guys, what we're seeing today is light versus dark, good versus evil. This is spiritual warfare. And what we're facing as a country right now, a lot of people say this is the most important election of our lifetime every 2 years.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people happen to believe it for 2024, that this is the most important election of our lifetime. How do you explain?
Well, I'm clinging to the hope that elections still matter. I really want to believe that because I'm American in a very fundamental way. And so I believe in the actual mechanics of democracy, like the people should rule, But leaving aside even elections, I think it's clearly a pivot point in history, and I don't think the issues that we debate and really are in some ways distractions are the core issues at all. I mean, there are forces, unseen forces, acting on people. It's funny, in February, I was like trying to think about what to do for Lent. I'm not a particularly faithful or virtuous person, but like you try to do something. I already quit smoking, so like what's next? And I thought, well, I'm just gonna read the Bible. And no, I'm not gonna do a Bible study. I'm a Protestant, so I feel like I have a right to kind of read it myself. And I'm sorry, I feel that way. And so I've been reading it since February, and I'm like about halfway done. And I haven't talked to anyone about it, and I haven't been in it, just been myself reading it. And I have all kinds, it's like the most interesting thing I think I've ever done, actually. It's unbelievable. The amount of drama in those books that has been hidden from me as a regular churchgoer in the Episcopal Church. Like, wait, why didn't you never mention this? This is like unbelievable. What? But the two things I have come away with after reading the entire New Testament, and I'm up to Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, is with the exception of Jesus, every figure is like really flawed.
Big time.
Like flawed in a way where you'd be like, I don't know if I could be friends with that person. You know what I mean? Yep. Abraham enters Egypt and he's like, oh, it's my sister actually, take her. What? What? I was saying to my wife, who was a religion teacher, I was like, why didn't anyone, what is that? And she's like, maybe the point is that God takes people who are not perfect people, not only not perfect people, like they're so imperfect again, I don't think I could have dinner with them, and uses them for these grander purposes. That's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I notice is that people, while they have free will, of course, and they can make decisions and they live with the consequences of those decisions, they're not really in charge of the arc of history at all. They are being acted upon a lot.
Amen.
Okay? And I never really appreciated that because I'm American, and so I grew up with this feeling that we're the sum total of our choices. And, well, that's not what I'm reading at all. Yeah, people's choices matter. You need to do certain things and not do other things. On the other hand, you are not in charge. You are being acted upon by a world you can't see. And that, by the way, is consistent with my life experience. Like, I've seen that, I've lived that, I'm 54. And so I feel like it's really important to approach politics with that in mind. Like, a lot of these issues are symbols of this much larger battle. And the final thing I will say is I do think we should approach these questions with humility.
Amen.
You know, we don't always know. I was at dinner last night at 801, which I strongly recommend. Surprisingly good lobster, kind of weird for Iowa. I'm like, is this from the coast of Iowa? No, but it was good. But anyway, we were talking about candidates, and I was eating with someone who's a Christian, and I said, I can't tell if this person is a tool of light or darkness, you know what I mean? So we don't always know, actually, at all, and we should always admit that. You know, I've got very strong feelings about all kinds of issues, but it's so important to be open to the possibility that I'm completely wrong, and that what I'm espousing is actually destructive, not constructive. So just to approach it with humility. Like, we're all about 100 times more ignorant than we admit.
Yes, amen. Paul would say, I'm the worst of the worst, right?
Yeah,
so I would
that's a good place to start.
It is. I would suggest keep reading the Bible, and I want to finish here.
I can't wait to find out how it ends.
I'll tell you how it ends.
I know.
We win. We win. Real quick. And then we got to wrap it up. But I think one of the reasons Darla likes you more after she meets you more is because you are very focused and you love your family and you think families are the bedrock.
Well, who else is on your side?
Good question. Some of us have family members that might, anyhow. But you really, I mean, that really just exudes out of you the importance of family.
Yeah, and it also just triggers me to judginess too, honestly, sometimes, especially with politicians. It's like, how do your kids feel about you? I mean it.
You bet.
You know, who cares what the crowd thinks of you? How many cares stupid votes you got? You know, if you've got a child who like hates you, or whose whole life is organized around rebelling against you, maybe you should pause. Like, what are you doing in this ballroom? You have a child who's like actively working to hurt you. That's a much more important relationship, and this is very common with politicians. They have family members, close family members, who really hate them, and I feel like, wow, you know, I have a lot of problems. I don't have that. And that is the most important thing. I'm completely convinced that your obligations to other people flow outward in concentric circles. And it begins with your spouse, and then your children, and then your parents, and your siblings, and then your employees, and then your coworkers, and people you meet, and then the waiter at the restaurant. And I judge people by how much peace is in those concentric circles. Do you have a happy family? Yeah. Do they respect you? Do they love you? Are they functional? How are they doing? Do your employees respect you? Do the people who see you every day have high regard for you? And if they don't, I don't take you seriously. And I mean that.
Well, family's our middle name. And just I want to clear this up. You'll see a small I in the word family in everything we do. And the reason we have a small I is because when you have a big I in family or in relationships, you're going to have a train wreck. So we always say have a small I in all of that. Tucker Carlson, you are going to do great today, and you have this whole audience cheering you on and praying you up.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.